It's called a quick claim deed because
Yes.
what happened, the lady, she lives in Maryland, I believe, and she had a property in Florida. But during the pandemic, she stayed away for a long time. So somebody realized that there was no activity going on over the property. So somehow they had a transfer. They used a quick claim deed to transfer the property in their name and was living there. So when the lady came after a few, maybe 7 or 8 months, she decided she wanted to visit her property. When she reached there, somebody was living in her property. She had a hard time to get them out. She had to call the city to come
And
in and see.
claim that they had bought the property.
Yeah, I believe it was for $75.
Welcome to the Immigrant Experience in America, an immigrant human library, where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants in the United States and around the world. Listen in as we add another story to our immigrant human library.
Right. And I've had conversations in interviews before where we talk about the fact that manners is just not a big thing here.
Mhm.
And I feel like I go the extra mile when I deal with young people or even with my daughter to make sure that I teach her to say please and thank you, or to say good morning, and to say and give some sort of deference to people who are older, because it's definitely not taught very much here. And that I think manners is something important for kids to learn, because it will follow them as they go through life, to show respect to people as they interact with others. But I mean, there's another conversation about the history of the United States and why that came to be. But yeah, we'll talk about that another time.
We had to be very respectful to anyone we see. Someone is older. If when walking home from school, we walked through the districts. And if you see someone sitting on there, well, we say veranda, but here they said porch. If you saw someone sitting and you walk and pass and never say good evening, ma'am, or good evening, mister, or good morning, or whatever, you know, I, that's like a lesson for you, because they're gonna go tell your parents, hey, your child passed my home the other day and they don't have any manners. They saw me sitting and they walked past me like they didn't even see me.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like it's just a thing. If you have to, or else you get a scolding for that.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely part of the Jamaican culture. Like,
Mhm.
everybody speak. Even if you don't know the person and you walk into the doctor's office, you come in and people are sitting there and you walk through the door, you say
Mhm.
good morning, good, hello, or how, you don't have to go into the big long conversation, but you greet people. That's a regular
Yeah,
thing that you walk around in Jamaica,
yeah.
and everybody says hello, good
Mhm.
morning, good afternoon. It's just, and I noticed that when I was there recently too. So yeah, that's a good point you're making. But
Yeah.
and so
Or
it
if
makes
you
you
don't do it, they'll curse you. They're like, hey, you don't see me sitting here. How come you just walk past and you didn't even say you don't have any manners?
right. It's true. And the funny thing, after a number of years of being here, the culture shock of just the way things are here in the United States, it can, oh my gosh. It can really tire you and wear you down, and just trying to figure out like how people operate. Because I remember after a while, I used to walk and say hello to people, and people, some people won't even speak to you if you
Yeah,
just pass and say
they won't
hello.
even respond to you, or if they will respond to you, they give you a fake smile. It's like the
Right,
smile for 1 second and their face went back to being serious. You don't
right,
even know
right.
if that's a real smile or what. It's just like a smirk.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so after a while I realized over the years that I actually stopped speaking, because I didn't know who was gonna appreciate my good mornings from who would not. And so I would
Yeah,
only say good morning if it was people that I know would
because that's the
appreciate me
norm.
greeting
I
them.
think it's the norm for some people, and I think it does belong. It depends on the state. Raise kids to say yes, ma'am, yes, sir. And if she walk into a room and she see people, she will speak because that's how she was raised. So I think it depends on the state or the city. Every
Right.
state have different ways of doing things.
Right, exactly. So that's a good point you're making, Nadine, and thanks for
Mm.
sharing a bit about your what life was like in Jamaica, what life was like in the initial stages as you move here from Jamaica. And so I'm wondering, as you realize, okay, this is a new place that we're going to be living, what was your American dream? And what were some of the challenges that came along as you really just tried to figure life out here?
Well, coming here at 17 years old, I didn't really have a specific dream in mind apart just going back to school because at that age, there's nothing much I wasn't really thinking what I want to do, where I want to be. So, I went back to high school immediately and I did have a part-time job as well. And, went on to college. It was like later in my 20s, mid 20s when I really probably think what I really want to do with my life. So I lived in Kansas City for 8 years and then I relocated to Georgia.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And I don't know if you could talk about how did you figure things out? Like figure out what was it like applying for work, interviewing, which is not something that we had to do when we were in Jamaica. We didn't actually get to that stage in our life. What was it like? I know you had to go through a few interviews because you worked in the banking industry for a number of years. So what was it like interviewing and applying to job? What was that like for you?
So my first job here in the United States was working at Kmart with a cashier. Interview, it wasn't too much stressful because we got referred by our, cousins that was already working there. And everybody knew them and loved them. They were hard workers. So it wasn't too hard for us to get on. But it was later when, after you finish your degree and you have to really go out there and find a career. As I was saying, public speaking for me, I do get a little timid sometime when I have to do interviews, but I try to, put my best out there, and just show my experience, my past experience. I'm a hard worker, I'm easy learner, so.
Right. Okay. All right. So Nadine, can you talk about your career path? So you went on, finished your undergrad. What have you done over the years? Like, what are some of your accomplishments and what are you
Yeah.
doing now?
So no, yeah, I know you just mentioned I've been in banking for over 20 years and I became a real estate agent. I got my license 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm in the real estate business as well now.
Okay. And any challenges in particular that you'd like to share about, the work world, managing a family, and, just being an immigrant and trying to figure things out? Do you have any advice or for like some of the biggest challenges that you faced over the years?
Well, as you mentioned, having a family, which we kind of touched on before, having a family and working, that is very hard. Even now, sometimes my children have to go to, different activities. Well, just to go back a little bit, I've never had a chance to let them participate in any activities because I was never available to take them at the time where they needed to go. So now my daughter is doing color guard and I'm trying my best. She's in high school now and it's sometimes hard to find transportation to take her because of the time, so that is a big challenge for me, being
Right,
a mom, working a full-time job, having children, they need to go places but you just can't be there to take.
right.
Yeah.
And that's part of the challenge of raising children in a country like the United States where work is such like a priority
Yeah,
in a
it's
lot of our lives,
just
right?
like you're always on the go. I mean, it's just a fast-paced country. You have to be, it's a constantly moving. I know
Right.
sometimes, like you always ask me, when are you going to slow down? When are you gonna do this? When are you gonna, but it's like it's always something to do that you just always have to keep going, you know.
Right. And what do you think Interestingly, what do you think it would have been like raising children in Jamaica?
Well, I think it would be maybe I think it would be easier in some sense because I'm not trying to compare my children with other, but sometime now, when I do get a chance to speak with a child my daughter's age, and they're so much mature. It's like because I know that's the way I was too because we had the chance to go out and take taxis. We walk to school, we take taxi to school. Parents can send their children to stores, at that age, and they go and they come
And
back.
that's in Jamaica you're referring
Yes,
to,
in
right?
Jamaica. And so now when I do talk to a child, my daughter, it's just like you could just see the difference. The maturity level is so much different. I think the children over there is more open. They're more exposed, not in a bad way. It's just, they're more exposed to the reality of life.
Right. And
Yeah,
right, they're given more responsibilities probably,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
My
because I see
yeah,
children in Jamaica once they pass the common entrance and have to go to high school. There's so many of them who travel for miles
yeah, 10
taking public
years old. I
transportation.
told my daughter all the time, a 10-year-old child that's going to high school and they may have to travel hours to get to the school, different taxis. They have to take a taxi from one location to another every day, morning, evening, and
Right. Yeah, and we see it all the time. They travel for miles away from home and they have to it's just a part of the culture. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of high school children have to just travel across the island to get to their high school that they're slated for. And so,
yeah,
yeah, children here, they're mature in certain things, but not in others. Because the
yeah,
security
they're
situation here, we have to be careful sending our children out too much because of some, things that we've heard that has happened on the news but interestingly, I spoke to somebody who grew up in New York and they say they were able they were expected to do that. Travel, take the train with their younger ones and take them
mhm.
here and take them there. And so maybe it's the suburban life that kind of keeps
Yeah,
these
that's what
kids
I
in
was
the
gonna say
house.
because the kids they're more sheltered here. So it's like when you ask them to do something, it's like they're lost. They don't understand what you're asking them to do.
Right. So interesting. Two different worlds. And we just hope that we are doing the best that we can for our kids and preparing them to be adults who can, be able to handle whatever life brings them. So,
Yeah.
but I think they're smart kids. They're gonna be all right.
Yeah, and yeah,
Um,
I think into sometime maybe I get maybe hard on them because I know at their age what I was doing, like I mentioned, talking to now I speak to a child my daughter's age, but I do remember when I was her age, how it was. So I think I still have those memory and I'm expecting her to be like that too.
right, right. And that's where we have to be so mindful to kind of balance the fact that they're living in a different environment. They've had different experiences, different exposure, and
Mhm.
kind of allow them to be kids right where they are. It's not easy. It's a
Yeah.
constant struggle being an immigrant mom.
And
Um,
then the world is so different, not only different cultures, but it's so much electronics that's going around. It's hard to keep your child away from it. If I said, don't watch the TV so much, then he would go look for the Nintendo. If I take the Nintendo away, he's looking for the computer. It's like a constant fight trying to get them to take up a book.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah, the children these days have so much distraction. We've talked about that before. When we
Mhm.
were growing up, we didn't have cell phones. Cell phones was
No.
like, yeah. And we didn't have all these distractions. So, oh my gosh, they're getting so much, being so overloaded, inundated with so much information,
Mhm.
exposed to so much online that you just hope, but my gosh, that you're making or doing right by them allowing them to get exposure to some of the stuff that eventually will prepare them in some sense to be comfortable using technology, because that's the world we live in. But on the other hand, the distraction, they're not necessarily mature to handle the distraction and
Yeah,
managing that being so young, right?
yeah, it's hard to balance because, like you said, you don't want to deprive them, but at the same time, you don't want them to have too much of it. So it's like, it's
Yeah, it's a constant struggle, girl. I deal with it. I see you dealing with it. And I've talked to so many other parents who are just trying to work it out and praying at the same time that you do right by them. Oh my goodness. So I wonder, Nadine, with your accents, you shared a little bit, like how has it been for you kind of navigating the work world, being this immigrant woman, very motivated and driven and trying to, achieve things. What was it like being an immigrant woman in the workplaces that you've worked throughout your time here?
I did talk about that question, but I didn't really have any issue being an immigrant woman. I maybe because, well, in the last 15 years, I work with immigrants themselves. I work with Asians. So maybe that way we were, most of us that work there were immigrants. But I never really have any problems because I know, they know I'm a hard worker. The responsibility, the duties they give to me, I'll just get it done. So I've never really have any problems being an immigrant in the workplace.
Right, right, right. Okay. And and no specific challenges as far as, maybe your accent or any other. I'm just particularly thinking about, because we've both kind of after college went off to different places. Like, have you had any specific challenges where you find like you weren't really in the in group of certain places, whether socially outside of work or anywhere? Like, I'm
Yeah,
trying to get a
I
sense of
think
what was your immigrant experience like
I
living in
think
America?
my biggest problem with when I first moved, like, was high school, trying to fit in with other students. I was new and my accent, and I think that was the biggest time. The most challenges I had was high school. But
Mm-hmm.
after, I started talking to more people, getting out there, meeting people, working. It was fine communicating with everyone else. We would joke around from time to time. They'll make fun of my accent. And if I say a word that's different, like I could give some example. When I first started working in the bank, back in Jamaica, we said deposit. In America, they said deposit. So I remember when my first job at the bank, I would say deposit. So they would make fun of me all the time. And even for me now, I could laugh at myself because it sounds so funny when you say that. But because we were under the British colony, some of the words were pronounced differently. And so, yeah, in Jamaica, we don't say deposit, we say deposit. And, I remember my coworkers, at times to time they would make fun of me, but it was just all fun.
Right, for how you
Yeah. Yeah.
pronounce certain words, right?
Yeah. And then I don't know if you remember. You remember Paseo? You remember Paseo? Was it Paseo Road in Kansas City? Paseo, the
Yes,
pronunciation.
paseo.
So yeah, I would always say Paseo. When yeah, and there was like, it's not Paseo, it's Paseo.
It depends. The Latinos with their Spanish accent might say paseo, but I mean in English it could be paseo,
Yeah, because
depending.
we pronounce our A different. So it's like when they say it's like it sounds like it has an L when they say paseo, but I was like, no, it's not paseo, it's paseo. And they're like, no. So it took me a long time to transition to the way they speak
Right, right, right. Yeah.
pronunciations.
It's that American accent type of a thing and the British accent differentiation.
Yeah,
Yeah, no.
like my name, they say Nadine, but it's really Nadine. So when somebody said Nadine, I said, oh, that person must be they're not American. When they said Nadine,
Right. 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 The stress is different when they're putting the pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, Nadine, if you had any specific advice for immigrants, and then we can you can tell me a little bit about your experience being a real estate agent, right? Any particular advice you have for immigrants just coming here and trying to figure this world out? It can be so daunting and challenging trying to adjust to this new environment.
Yeah, I I would say, don't be afraid to talk to people. Like for me, I think over the years I shunned myself away from people. There's probably a lot more I could have learned and get more assistance if, I was not so shy to talk to people. But, I'm opening more and learning so much more, even with being a real estate agent.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if there's something you want to do, you have a dream. A lot of immigrants come here, they already have what they want to do when they come, but then they get out there in the working world and they lost that dream because, trying to make a ends meet, trying to work to survive. But if there's something you want to do, try to stick to it and just get it done. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that the hard work mentality. So tell us more about, this real estate space that you've entered and what has it been like since you've been working in the space and, what are some advice that you may have for people as they try to find a real estate agent, and like what are some things that are happening with real estate today?
Well, I've been licensed for 2 years, but this is something I've always wanted to do. This is why I just mentioned if there's something you want to do, no, don't wait to get it done because I had a look at real estate back in my early mid-20s, and sometime I wish I've done it before because I would be well seasoned right now if I had done back before I had my children. I know right now, everyone is maybe just a bit scared of the market, trying to figure which direction is going. But I think the interest rate I think is not so much of a scare because I got my first house when I was 28 years old, 28, 29. And at that time my interest rate was about 5.5%. So it's not so much different now than what it is back then. So, I don't think people should let that scare them from actually buying a house because if you really think about it, when you're renting a place, you're paying 100% interest rate because all the money you put into the renting is going to somebody else's pocket and you don't get anything from it when you walk away. But if you do buy a property, at least, you own it for 5 or 10 years and you decide to sell it, the property appreciate and you can get some equity. I
Right.
think if somebody is out there that really thinking about buying a property, maybe it's a first time home buyer, I don't think they should let the interest rates stop them from doing so.
Right.
And there are also programs out there for first time home buyers. So if coming up with a down payment or the closing cost is also a problem, that they also can look into getting some down payment assistance.
Sure, sure. I came across an article recently that talked about some of the fraud that takes place in the real estate space. For example, somebody moved into somebody's home during the pandemic and was living there because somebody had come up with a fake
Yeah, it's called
agreement and
it's
sold
called
and
a quick
sold it.
claim deed.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It's called a quick claim deed because
Yes.
what happened, the lady, she lives in Maryland, I believe, and she had a property in Florida. But during the pandemic, she stayed away for a long time. So somebody realized that there was no activity going on over the property. So somehow they had a transfer. They used a quick claim deed to transfer the property in their name and was living there. So when the lady came after a few maybe 7 or 8 months, she decided she wanted to visit her property. When she reached there, somebody was living in her property. She had a hard time to get them out. She had to call the city. the
And
community.
claim that they had bought the property.
Yeah, I believe it was for $75, 75. And so they were asking who buy a property for $75, you know. It was just, yeah, and I did see another incident a couple weeks ago here in Georgia where I believe it was somebody in the military. They put their property on the market for sale, but then so they realized there was a tenant inside the property. So somebody rent them the property. It wasn't really the owner that rented it, but and so they were trying to go through trying to remove them. So yeah, when those things happen, you know, it's a hard thing to deal with.
And so any advice for people to handle, you know, when something like that happens? I mean, do they need to get some legal assistance or something?
You know, for a situation like this, I know what happened is there are a lot of fraudsters out there looking for different opportunities with the real estate market. So they will notice that the property is coming up for listing, and somehow they would capture the information and pose it as its rent is being listed for rent. So they would collect some rent upfront from you and rent you the property, but it's not really their own. I had a friend that was looking for property. You know, she's looking for rental property, so she contacted me and I was helping her to look. But she called me one day and she said, "Do you know, I found this property that I really wanted to go look at." And I communicated with the agent or the person that lists the property, and they told her in order for her to secure the property, she needed to pay them some money up front. They wanted her to give her the debit card, so she didn't feel comfortable, so she went and buy a gift card and gave them
What?
yeah. So so she got to the property, she went to view the property, and the guy is telling her, it's so, you know, she's telling him, you know, yeah, I'm at the property, but I cannot get in. He told her to break the door. She's like, "Are you serious?" She said, "Yeah, I'm giving you permission. Just break it. It's okay." And then she said there were neighbors outside looking. So she's like, "I'm not doing that. You know what? You telling me to break the door and go inside the property, and there's neighbors around here looking at me. Then when they call the police, what is going to happen?" So she went away, and the next day she saw the same listing came about again with a different agent. So she contacted the agent. The agent told her, you know, she contacted the agent and she said, "Is this your property?" She said, "Yeah, this is my listing." You know, so it happens. I have another one where I actually was helping somebody. This one, I actually went to the property myself, but I did try to contact the listing person. They never, I'd leave them a voicemail telling them I was a real estate agent and I'm trying to view their listing. They never responded to me. We got to the property just to see if it has a super lock box, because if it did, I would be able to open it, but it was a combination. They had to give me the combination to go in. So the property was listed, it was a rental property, 3-bedroom in Snellville. It was listed for $1,350 for rental. And we said, "Oh no, that sounds like it's way below market right now. It's too good to be true." The next day I actually see big, and I couldn't find it on the multiple listing service. So that is another thing. You know, they use realtor.com to do fake listings. If it's not on the multiple listing service, then something is wrong.
Which is
Again,
the MLS. Most people
yes,
refer
the
to that as
MLS.
the MLS.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is what the real estate agent have access to. So if you cannot locate that property there, you know, there's something wrong. So when I noticed the next day the property came up again, and so I said, "Hey, you know, I see the property and it's really listed for $1,750." She said, "Yeah, I figured something was wrong. It was too good to be true for it to be." Yeah, so I believe now that is becoming more prevalent, the fake listing. So if somebody's out there looking for property and they come across one, if it's too good to be true, most likely it is. You should have an agent check it out for you They can go into the multiple listing service and see if the property is actually listed there and who the agent is that's listing it. That's
Okay.
one way. And also no agent would ever ask you to pay them upfront to secure the property. They will never ask you to give them a cash down payment to secure it if you really want to rent it.
Yes, right. And so how do people find your service, Nadine?
Well, I am on Instagram. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok. But I can also give you my handles later to post. And just one more important wire fraud that I notice now is happening a lot is called the escrow wire fraud. This one is when the perpetrator noted that somehow they will hack into the closing attorney's email, and if they notice a closing is coming up, they will also email it to the buyer. They will send a wire instruction to the buyer for you to wire your closing down payment to them. So you should always, make sure you know who your closing attorney is. You're communicating with them on a regular basis. And also always verify the wire instruction before you send the wire, because that is something that is happening a lot now. And once the money is gone, there is no way to retrieve it.
Wow. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard of people actually clicking on those fake emails and sending the money and it just disappears.
Yeah, because I've seen it happen to someone where she got the email. She thought it was coming from the closing attorney. When it was time for her to do her closing, she had to wire her down payment and closing costs and the total amount. She never verified it. She got the email and she thought it came from the actual closing attorney office, because the email is gonna have the closing attorney name and their instructions, but different bank, different routing number. If you don't call and verify it and you do go ahead and process your wire, that money is gone. You will never get it back.
Oh my goodness. There's
So
so much fraud and
there
scams
is a
out
lot of
there.
fraud out there. Some of them, I won't talk about on here, but those are the ones I would say, make sure you verify, always verify, because once you send it, there is no way to retrieve it.
Right. Oh my goodness. My gosh. Well, thanks for sharing all that good information for people, and especially immigrants who are new to the United States and, buying property overseas in other countries tend to have different ways of operating, different,
Yeah.
ways of going about getting a property and so forth. And so it's different here in the United States. So be cautious, be careful in selecting a realtor, making sure that you trust the person and that there's no fraud or scams involved and so forth, as Nadine is sharing a few of those incidents with you. And, just be careful when you're operating online these days. I mean, everything seems to be a big deal, just,
Yeah,
going
just
online.
make sure, you double check with your agent, double check with the, closing attorney, make sure have everything is checked out thoroughly before, processing. And yeah, like, you find a property, have an agent to check it out for you. Make sure it's, because yeah, it's that I've heard a few incident with the fake listing.
Yes, right. Yeah, no, that's serious. And your money will be gone if you happen to be caught up in one of these. There's no way to get your money back. So please listen to my sister's advice to make sure that you're getting a reputable real estate person, and make sure you verify and check them out too. People might be
Yeah.
passing cards out to you. Make sure that you verify that they're actually legit
Mhm.
before working with them, and that they have integrity and that you can trust them with doing business and so forth. So but thank you so much for sharing your story and your advice about real estate and doing real estate in the United States, Nadine. I think our audience will find it very helpful, and thanks for stopping by, and we wish you much success on your real estate, developing
Thank
your real
you.
estate business.
Yeah, I look forward, to helping a lot more people.
So, okay, again, so we'll get you mentioned that you're on TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and you also have your real estate website that you will send over to us for us to put in the show notes. That's
Yes, I
right.
will provide to you.
Yes, okay. So we'll if you need to reach out to Nadine, if you're in the Georgia area, she's licensed in Georgia, and be happy to show you any properties. She's quite legitimate. She's passed the test, and it has been in operation now for over 2 years. And we'll be happy to take you around if you're needing to buy a property and to explain how this works here in the United States.
I know you mentioned, yeah, I am licensed for Georgia only right now. But if you are living in another state, I can help you to find an agent in that state.
Oh, okay. That's another part of it that you
Yeah,
can also refer
I can
them.
also make you another referral for wherever you are living, or if you are planning to move to Georgia,
Right. Okay, very good.
transition
So,
from another state.
right. So you hear that, folks. If you're in another state listening to this interview and you want to reach out to Nadine because you feel like you can trust her, and if you're not in Georgia, she can help you. She can connect you with a legitimate real estate person that she has a connection with, and she knows it is legit in another state that can work with you and help you to find properties. Whether is it should I say commercial or personal? Do you work across the board?
Yeah, residential right now, yeah, I will do some commercial as well, but my focus right now is mostly residential.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, and investors, if there's any investors out there looking for properties, I can also help with that.
Okay, very good. So the full gamut. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you for educating us on the real estate space and sharing your story here on the Immigrant Experience. We wish you much success as you continue to build your real estate business and
Thank you.
continue realizing your American dream.
Thank you. For anyone who's interested in finding me, I am on Instagram at GNSR_realty, Nadine Johnson _ on TikTok at N_Johnson81.
Say it again, the Instagram say it again, because that was a bit long.
Okay, so for anyone interested in reaching out to me, I have 2 Instagram page. I have GNSR_realty. I also have as my name as Nadine Johnson _, and you can also reach me through TikTok at N_Johnson81.
Okay, and we'll put the link for your website, your real estate website in the show notes as well.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good.
We thank our listeners around the world, and we appreciate your continued support as we build our human library. Please remember to give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, and circle of influence.